welcome to another episode of Is This a Great Game or What? With the Hall of Famer Tim Kurkjian. I'm his son, Jeff Kurkjian. Dad, good to be back behind the microphone with you.
Right. It's a very personal episode, Jeff, because I went to the Cubs Nationals game the other night, and I had a really nice chat with their catcher, and his name is, Jeff?
Carson Kelly.
Right. So I explained, look, I've talked to Carson Kelly, been in the league for 10 years. I've talked to him several times, okay? But this is the first time I approached him to tell him that he has our favorite name in baseball because my firstborn child is Kelly and my firstborn grandchild is Carson. So Carson Kelly becomes my favorite baseball name. So when I explained this to him, he had a bit of a quizzical look on his face, but then he said, that's really cool. He really liked it. And you sent me the screenshot. Did I get that right, Jeff? Technically, a screenshot.
I'm really proud of you. You're doing a lot better on the tech lingo, Dad. I gotta say.
Right, and it came from David Van Wert, who took a picture of Carson Kelly's name on the scoreboard at Nationals Park, and he wrote to you, "Some say it's the best name in baseball, Carson Kelly." Now, Jeff, it's not the best name in baseball. It's our favorite name in baseball just because it has such a personal touch to it. Agreed?
Yeah, I mean, and you know, he hit for the cycle from the 9 spot, so he's also a Kurkjian. It's
right.
Perfect.
Right, and the first guy ever to hit from the 9 spot, the cycle before the month of April ever. So he had something to do with it. And when I told him, I wouldn't say he was moved, Jeffrey, but he really appreciated that his name has brought so much joy to our little family here.
I think he's going to be the title of a chapter of your next book at this point.
Well, I don't think there's any doubt about that. And speaking of personal stuff, Jeff, we had a trade this week. Lamont Wade Jr. went from the Giants to the Angels. The Giants general manager is Zach Manassian, and the Angels general manager is Perry Manassian. So two brothers made a trade, and they traded Lamont Wade Jr., by the way, went to the University of Maryland like I did. And of course, Perry and Zach are both Armenian. And, you know, my grandparents from my father's side, your grandfather's side are from Armenia. And we have an Armenian last name. So we have a pretty good connection there. I thought that was pretty cool. Not only did two general manager brothers make a trade, they're both Armenian. Am I overstating this?
No, that's a fantastic. First of all, let's start with the brothers aspect of this, Dad. Imagine calling your brother saying, "Hey, what do you?" I'm thinking Moneyball here, but it's right. Conversation between two brothers trying to make a trade, and then they catch up with mom a little bit later, and they say, "Hey, did you talk to your brother? Yeah, we just made a trade."
I think it's really cool, and you know, the Armenians, Jeff, are a very hearty people. They're very loyal. And they're great. So I'll never forget 2001. I think I told you this story before. But in 2001, I went to the All-Star game in Seattle. I think you went that year. Not sure. And I was at one of the parties before the All-Star game. And an Armenian waiter came up to me and looked at me and like stopped dead in his tracks and said, "Oh, my gosh, it's you." And 30 seconds later, and I'm talking to this Armenian waiter, 30 seconds later, another Armenian waiter walks by. Two Armenian waiters at the same party in Seattle. And one Armenian waiter says to the other, "You got to meet this guy. This guy works for ESPN. He's on TV and he's Armenian. This is Armen Keteyian." So, so they had the wrong Armenian journalist. So I didn't have any other choice than to be Armen Keteyian for about 30 seconds as I shook their hands. And my concern has always been that these two Armenian waiters someday are going to meet the real Armen Keteyian, who's about a foot taller than me. And they're going to say, "You know what? 25 years ago, some dinky little guy at a party said that he was you." which I didn't. They just got the wrong Armenian. Instead of Tim Kurkjian, they thought I was Armenian, which, by the way, is a huge compliment for me, given how gifted and decorated Armenian is.
Dad, how many other baseball writers have you been mistaken for? I know, may he rest in peace, you've been mistaken for Pedro Gomez a couple of times, right? And I'm sure back in the day, Peter Gammons, just because you guys were both doing baseball tonight, and they would just kind of think, oh, wait, there's a baseball guy on ESPN. Are you Peter Gammons? Have you gotten Buster Olney before?
Oh, I've gotten just a little bit of everyone. In fact, last year at the Little League World Series, same thing happened like the cocktail party in Seattle. Guy comes up to me with his entire family and says, God, I love you on TV. You know more than anyone, Mr. Ravitch. It is such a great honor to meet you. So now suddenly I'm Carl Ravitch. And before I have time to correct myself and say, well, you've got the wrong guy, I've now met everyone in the family. Now they've said 5 times, you got to meet Carl Ravitch. So I became Carl Ravitch for a few minutes, which means for a few minutes, I had the smallest hands of any adult male in history, and I became a 4 handicap for a 5-minute period because I had no choice but to become Ravi. So I did that.
Well, Dad, you had a run-in at a party when it came to our Armenian roots. I don't know if I ever told you this story. I was at a party in college, and I met a friend of a friend, and she was Armenian. Well, there's loud music going on, and we're talking, and she told me her last name was Kurkjian. And it's loud music, and I say, well, that's my last name. It was not. But we found out that my last name, Kurkjian, and hers, Kurdian, was very close. And that night we made jokes, man, if we brought you home to the family, it would be like barely changing your last name. You'd have to change one letter, basically. But Dad, another quick Armenian story was right after my wife had our baby, McKinley, I got a DM from the Armenian Sisters Academy in Radnor, Pennsylvania, saying that McKinley had basically already been accepted into kindergarten.
She was 1 day old?
What? If that. I mean, it was so crazy. And it was very sweet, because I have mentioned on the radio here in Philadelphia for 92.5 XTU, like, oh, Kurkjian, yeah, it's an Armenian last name, talked about that from time to time. So they basically admitted her on birth. It was great. Little do they know I'm a terrible student, and it's a terrible student. Thankfully, my wife, who was a 4.0 student, hopefully our daughter McKinley is more of a bookworm like she was. But anyway, maybe she'll end up at the Armenian Sisters Academy in Radnor, PA.
Yeah,
who knows?
You weren't a terrible student. You spoke at graduation at Syracuse for the Newhouse School. They would not have put a bad student to speak at the Newhouse School.
Well, Dad, just being honest, I mean, we were studying how to edit videos and tell a story. Those are the good things. I only spoke at my high school graduation because I was the class president. But when this is the most embarrassing moment of my life. The principal comes up at our high school graduation, Dad, and she's so proud of the education. I'm on the stage, right? She's so proud. She says, if you are a scholar, right, which means you got like a 4.0 GPA or more, please stand. And all these students stand. If you're this, please stand. If you're this, please stand. Now, 80% of the graduates are standing, and I'm still sitting on the stage. Then they're like, if you went to class, stand. And I'm like, that's me. Okay, I'll stand up. Anyway, no, Dad, you're my dad. I know you're always going to be supportive of me, but let's move forward from the Armenian talk for now.
All right, Jeff, I got to support you one more time, okay?
Yeah.
We play golf over the weekend, which we never get to do because there's just no time. So my son, Jeffrey, hit a ball 275 yards off the tee. He did it twice in one round. Now, Jeff, you're a decent player. You've got a great swing. You're a good athlete, but you've never hit a ball 275 in your life. So I don't think I've ever seen you hit a ball 250 yards. So I called Frank from the Elias this morning, and I asked in the Jeffrey Kurkjian era, as opposed to the live ball era, the Jeffrey Kurkjian era, 1993 on. That was the year you were born, right?
Yes.
Okay. Has anyone ever hit a ball 275 twice in one round without ever hitting a ball 250 yards in any round before that. Frank is looking that up for us. I think he's going to have a hard time finding that, but I still think it was pretty amazing, Jeff. You pounded, and I mean crushed, 2 drives that were really, really impressive.
I will only say one minorly self-serving thing is I have hit a ball that far one other time. I wasn't playing with you, but it was one of those flukes, Dad. I hit the cart path twice, and then it went down a hill. So the hill itself was like I don't know, like 245. But it took me a bounce off the cart path, 2 down the hill to get me to that 275 range. So I got to say, I really appreciate it. I think it's because of the mustache. The summer of the stash is giving me some dad strength that I didn't think I possessed. But thank you. I really appreciate it. And Dad, you did really good from the senior tees this weekend. It was part of the rules of the tournament.
I'm 68 years old. I weigh 140 pounds. I'm hitting from the senior tees. So don't give me a hard time.
And Dad, you would have beaten us all if you played from our tees. Okay, let it be known you were the best guy in our group. That is for sure. You played great. Okay, let's jump into the takeaways with, I think, the number one story is what just broke yesterday, Monday.
Right. Roman Anthony, outfielder, has been called up by the Red Sox. He is the number one prospect in the minor leagues. And this spring, when I saw the Red Sox, Alex Cora, their manager, told me, you can take the 20 best prospects and put them right in front of you, and you will point to Roman Anthony and say, that's the best one right there. Just by the way he moves, his presence, his athleticism, just the way he carries himself. And he's got tremendous power. He hit a home run almost 500 feet the other day in the minor leagues. He stole 21 bases in the minor leagues last year, so he can run. He's got great patience for a guy with great power. In one of the games I did this spring, Jeff, he drew an 8-pitch walk to lead off an inning, which is really impressive for a 21-year-old trying to make his way in spring training. So this is a great move for the Red Sox. A lot of people are wondering, what took you so long? Of course, they're calling this the beginning of the Roman Empire, which is quite a bit of pressure for a guy who's 21 years old and has never played in the big leagues. Never forget, Jeff, a million years ago when Jeff Stone was called up by the Phillies, they called it the beginning of the Stone Age. And Jeff Stone didn't quite work out. Love that guy, covered him in Baltimore, but that was unfair to do it to him. It's probably unfair to do it to Roman Anthony, but I'm telling you, this kid has everything it takes to be a really, really good major league player, and the Red Sox need him right now.
That's a good opening takeaway, Dad. What other takeaways do you have?
Okay, the Pirates won 3 games in a row for the first time this year. They were the last team to finally win 3 games in a row. Even the Rockies won 3 games in a row before the Pirates did. So, look, Jeff, I'm not pulling for anyone, but it's never good when a team really, really struggles. And to see the Pirates win 3 games in a row is a good thing. But in the last 6 starts, because Paul Skeens pitched on Sunday, and he's again become the best pitcher in the National League and arguably the best in baseball. His last 6 starts, Jeff, 0.85 ERA. 45 strikeouts, and his record in those games is 3-3, just because they don't score any runs for him. And he didn't get the win on Sunday, but the Pirates won 3 games in a row. That's really good.
Yeah, and the other thing is, did you see when he got taken out of the game? He was shocked.
Yeah, well, he was like this in college. Kyle Peterson, who does college baseball for us, he's great. He told me, you'll love Paul Skeens because he never, ever wants to come out of a game. And a lot of college pitchers, a lot of young pitchers are trained by the industry. 6 innings, you're done. Not Paul Skeens. He does not want to come out of a game ever. Speaking of great pitching, the Padres have 12 on Sunday. Their pitching staff recorded their 12th shutout of the season. Wow. So just for some context there, the Rockies have 12 wins. The Padres have 12 shutout wins. Think about that for a second.
Wow.
That's never happened, that we've gotten to the 65 game mark of any season, and one team has 12 wins and the other team has 12 shutouts. That just speaks to sadly, how bad the Rockies have been, but how good the starting pitching has been for the Padres. Cal Raleigh hit another homer. Big dumper for the Mariners. He's got 26 home runs through Sunday. So that ties Pudge Rodriguez 2000 for the second most home runs at the All-Star break by a catcher. We've got plenty of time. The record is 28 in 1970 by, he made us laugh out loud.
Johnny Bench.
Sorry.
Johnny Bench,
Yeah.
of course.
Right. Okay. Sorry about that, Jeff. Shouldn't have done that. Speaking of really good players.
You can always quiz me, Dad. I just can't mix up Christian and Bronson Arroyo again, or else
right.
I think I'll be out of the will.
Look, that was forgivable. All right, Pete Crow Armstrong of the Cubs, Jeff, has really rounded into one of the best players in the game. We all knew he could run. We all knew that he was a great defensive outfielder, but he has really hit. And I was talking to Craig Counsell, Cubs manager, about him the other day, and he said it's amazing what this guy can do, how he chases the ball out of the strike zone and still hits it really hard somewhere, which is a hard thing to do, but that's how good he is. Craig also told me that not only is Pete Crow Armstrong the fastest player in the league, he said he's a different kind of fast than anyone I've ever seen, ever. He said it just, his quickness, his ability to stop and change direction. He said, I've just never seen anything like it. And he said defensively, he's the best defensive player on the planet, regardless of position. On the planet, Jeff. That says an awful lot, doesn't it?
It really does. And, it's funny. People call him PCA, Dad.
Right.
And I know you're into abbreviations. So a personal care assistant is a PCA, is like, that's what one would be in like the medical field if you go to somebody's house. And I know this because a friend of mine's girlfriend is a PCA. So I remember when they were in Japan and people were saying PCA and they had signs and all this stuff. I was like, why are they rooting for a personal care assistant? A personal care aide. What is that about? Pete Crow Armstrong, of course.
Right. Well, he's really, really good. And speaking of the Cubs, Jeff, they got their first home run from a third baseman. We've been talking about this all year. So the Cubs are the last team in the major leagues this year to get a home run from their third baseman, and they're doing it while leading the NL Central. They have they certainly have one of the best offensive teams, and they haven't gotten home run production from third, but they do have Matt Shaw at third base. And he's from the University of Maryland. He's a good player and he's a good hitter, but he hit his first home run as a third baseman on June the 7th. So now the Cubs are off tonight. I had a nice chat with Matt Shaw the other day. I told him that I graduated in 78. I felt the need to tell him it was 1978. I think he got a bit of a chuckle out of that. I'm not sure. But yeah, so we've got two Maryland guys in our podcast so far, Lamont Wade Jr. and Matt Shaw. There we go.
I was about to say a lot of Terps references today.
Right. Terps, Armenians, names, all very personal to the Kurkjian family.
Well, listen, I mean, if we were doing a professional lacrosse league podcast, we'd have Syracuse all over this one.
And the University of Maryland, a great lacrosse school.
Yeah, Dad, did you ever play lacrosse growing up?
No, Jeff, I've always been amazed by this. I grew up in Montgomery County. And I'd never seen lacrosse played till I went to the University of Maryland. And no one from my county, well, I wouldn't say no one, almost no one from my county ever played that sport. But anything north of Howard County, meaning Baltimore, they all played lacrosse. So it was so odd how, like, Columbia was the dividing line. Montgomery County didn't play lacrosse, whereas everyone north of it did. And now everyone in Montgomery County plays lacrosse. I wish I had played it. I would have loved to have played that game.
Yeah, and they always said crab cakes in football. That's what Maryland is all about. People make the argument that now it's crab cakes in lacrosse. Because lacrosse, so many great high school lacrosse players come out and play in Division I programs, but nobody ever really talks about us theater kids. I like to think we're pretty great in Montgomery County, Maryland. Let me tell you.
Wow.
Find me a better Nicely Johnson, my friend.
No, Jeff, you brought the house down as a sophomore, Nicely Johnson. Sit down, Jeff. You're rocking the boat, man.
Ain't that the truth? Yeah, that show's all about gambling and drinking alcohol. And I spent 5 years living in Las Vegas, so I know what Nicely Johnson went through. Let me tell you.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, Dad, we did so much talk about the home country, Armenia, at the top of this one, and a little bit about lacrosse. So let's take a quick break. And when we come back, we're going to do On This Date in Baseball History and get our Quirkjians. It's all coming up next on Is This a Great Game or What? Hit us with the Quirkjians on Is This a Great Game or What?
All right. So the struggling Braves lost a game last week in which they were ahead by 6 runs going into the 9th inning. The Diamondbacks won that game. First time in Diamondbacks history that they've won a game down by 6 entering the 9th. The last time the Braves lost a game like that was 766 straight games ago, meaning they had a 6-run lead going into the 9th, 766 times without losing. The last time they lost that game was in 1973 against the Mets. And this is sad. I don't want anyone to get upset, but there are 18 Mets that played in that game, and only 6 of them are still alive. That's how long ago it was,
Wow.
Jeff, that the Braves lost a game that they led by 6 runs entering the 9th. And this is the best part when I went to look at the box score, Jeff. The game delivering 2-run single in the top of the 9th was delivered by Willie Mays in his last year in the major leagues. And he got a hit off a Braves reliever. I'm going to quiz you again. A Braves reliever who's been on our show this year.
She caught Hank Aaron's home run.
Tom
and that was
House.
Oh, gosh,
So how great is that? Tom House makes the podcast again, only this time it was giving up a 2-run single to Willie Mays at the top of the 9th. The last time the Braves lost a game that they led by 6 runs entering the 9th.
Very impressive. And, immediately, Dad, when you put me on the test of which guest,
Jeff,
I get so nervous because I'm going to insult one of our guests.
Jeff, I hate being quizzed like that. I hate it. It's why,
One thing if you quiz me about a player, it's another thing. I mean, I got Tom House's number in my phone. It'd be embarrassing if I didn't remember.
All right, not a big deal, Jeff.
No, it's okay.
Jac Caglianone had a 4-for-4 game with the Royals. Remember we talked about him last week? Great prospect on. He had a 4-for-4 game. But Jeff, I love the box score lines of the week, and I think his is the box score line of the week. He had a 4-0. So it's pretty hard to go 4-for-4 in a game without a run scored or an RBI, and he did it not only in a victory, he did it in a victory in which his team scored 7 runs, and he's hitting in the middle of the order. So I checked the last time any player went 4-0-4-0 in a game in which his team scored at least 7 runs and won the game. The last time was Bo Bichette in 2022. So Jac Caglianone will not forget his first 4-hit game. He got 4 knocks, and yet he didn't drive in a run and score a run. How weird is that?
That is weird. And I'm shocked that it happened as early as 2022.
I was too. I thought it would be much, much longer than that. Speaking of long, so George Kirby of the Mariners is a really good pitcher, but he was injured early. He's just coming back. He had a no-walk, 14 strikeout game the other day. No walks, 14 strikeouts. That's pretty hard to do. And he did it with an ERA, his ERA going in, granted, limited sample, but his ERA going in was 8.56. So a guy with an 8.56 ERA had a 0-walk, 14 strikeout game. So that's the highest ERA by anyone ever to have a 0-walk, 14 strikeout game. The second highest was done by Randy Johnson in 2001. And it was in April. It was like his third start of the year. So the ERA was elevated just because it was a short sample. But how about those 2 names? 2 really good pitchers that had ERAs well over 7, 1 over 8, and had a 0-walk, 14 strikeout game.
Dad, when you say 0-walk, 14 strikeouts, I think that's what like the first 3 batters of a team did in a game.
Right.
this day and age with how many strikeouts there are.
Right. Totally agree. All right, Jeff, you know how much I love names. We talk about it every week. So I was in the Nationals clubhouse the other day and I was talking to Cole Henry and we were talking about quirky names, how many 4-letter names there are on the Nationals. Remember, we went through that. They'll start a lineup certain nights where 7 of 9 guys have 4 letters or in their exactly 4 letters in their last name. So we get to talking about that. And Cole Henry tells me something that I don't know. His first name is Jeffrey, which is yours. His middle name is Cole and his last name is Henry. So he looks at me and chuckles and says, I got 3 first names, Jeffrey, Cole, Henry. You know how much I love stuff like that. I'm not sure I've ever looked up anybody else that has 3 first names. Pretty cool.
Well, I mean, Neil Patrick Harris is a good one.
And what team did he play for, Jeff? We're keeping this to baseball, Jeff, all right?
Oh, well, I was just thinking of great guys who have 3 first names.
And he was an actor, right? He was, he is an actor, right?
Yeah, James Earl Jones.
Oh, Jeff, you're way ahead of me, right?
Jones isn't a first name, but continue, please.
All right, you got it. All right, speaking of names, this was great. This came from Max Manis on Twitter or X, whatever we call it. He wrote something in that, frankly, I had already noticed, but he presented it. When's the last time a pitcher and a batter faced each other where the pitcher's last name is the past tense of the hitter's name? So we had David Fry batting for the Guardians, and Max Fried, spelled Fried, was the pitcher. So I give Max tremendous credit for pointing out that we had a guy named Fry and a guy who spells his last name Fried as a pitcher-batter matchup.
Dad, I had so many people message us on our social media at Great Game or What on Facebook, on TikTok, and on Instagram. That exact people were sending us photos of it, and they're saying, "I know it's pronounced Freed, but you gotta talk about it."
All right,
and
not only
Dad, so many people did, and then when I got back, I was watching the Red Sox Yankees game, and the Tonys were on Sunday, and we had Hamilton,
right,
a batter pitcher matchup in the Red Sox Yankees game. And I just think neither of them are throwing away their shot. Wouldn't you say?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. David Hamilton, Ian Hamilton. That's really cool. I liked it more when Ian Hamilton pitched for the White Sox, and not routinely, several times, Ryan Burr pitched in the same game. So we had a Burr Hamilton pitching in the same game on the same team. Love that one.
Both of them pitching like they're running out of time, if you ask me.
Exactly. All right.
I'm just naming Hamilton songs at this point, Dad. Well, Stay with me.
I don't know any of them, Jeff. Sorry.
We saw Hamilton together.
I know.
We need another episode where Lin-Manuel Miranda comes up. So I'm just going to say his name because this will be 3 episodes now that Lin-Manuel Miranda has at least appeared on the podcast. Another 3 names.
All right. Well,
another 3 first names.
As a tribute to As a tribute to David Fry and to Max Fried, we're going to give the all-cooking team, okay? Talk about a stretch. So we have Max Fried, spelled Fried. Also on the pitching staff, Austin Kitchen from a couple years ago. Steve Grilly. Tom Butters. You have to butter things in order to cook.
Totally.
JP Sears, you have to sear meat. Boy, when I have to explain this stuff, Jeff, it's really bad. We have Eric Fryer, which is not the same as David Fry or Max Fried. All right. He's our catcher. Seth Brown. Boy, that's a stretch. You have to brown things when you're cooking. Edward Julian potatoes. Boy, oh boy. This is really bad. Cliff Cook is a good one. He's our third baseman.
I was going to say David Freeze. You got to freeze things, right?
Yeah, that's pretty good. I'm not sure. Yeah, that's pretty good, Jeff. You're contributing. Jeff Fry is spelled Frye is the shortstop. So you know the rules, Jeff. You can't use the same name more than once, but we have different spellings. And since these are my teams, I make the rules.
Wait, who's the second baseman?
The second baseman is Edward Julian. Third baseman is Cliff Cook.
Oh, okay.
The
So
shortstop is Jeff Fry.
So if the shortstop were to make a put out to the third baseman, it'd be Fry Cook.
Right, exactly. Very good, Jeff. Very good. David Fry is the DH, and our outfield is Buzz Boyle. You have to boil all sorts of things when you're cooking. Dusty Baker and
Perfect.
Bake McBride. So that's our all cooking team. Love it.
Shout out Bake McBride. That brings me back to the Aaron Boone episode from last year.
Right.
Bake McBride.
And nobody does it better, Bake McBride, batting stance impersonation, than Aaron Boone. He's the best.
Dad, on this date in baseball history, what do you have for us?
So in 1981, this is also personal to me. This was the night that Pete Rose tied Stan Musial's record for hits in the history of the National League at 36-30. So that night in Philadelphia, Jeff, Pete Rose got a hit off of Nolan Ryan to tie Stan Musial. So we think, all right, he's going to get another hit in this game and pass Stan Musial. Instead, Nolan Ryan struck him out 3 straight times. And I'm telling you, Jeff, it was almost like Nolan Ryan, who had a mean streak in him as wide as anyone, even though he's the nicest man in the world. He said, there's no way I'm going to let Pete Rose get 2 hits off of me and pass Stan Musial tonight. So he punched him out 3 times. And I'll never forget, Jeff, after that game in Philadelphia, I got in my car and I drove to New York. And I had to cover, a really big meeting for the 1981. It was a labor meeting about the strike, which was impending. So they played the next day on Monday, the 11th of June. But on June the 12th, all the games went away. So that was a very personal thing to me. I got to see Pete Rose get those hits. 1 hit. I got to see Nolan Ryan strike him out 3 times. And then I had to drive to New York for the worst assignment of my life because I had no idea how to cover a labor meeting of any sort. And baseball stopped 2 days later because the players went on strike. It was terrible.
Dad, I've seen on the internet a little bit here, people not giving enough respect to Nolan Ryan simply because he didn't win any Cy Young awards.
All right, Jeff, look, we got to understand Nolan Ryan is not the greatest pitcher ever, okay? Quite literally, not the greatest one, but he's the greatest power pitcher ever. He's the hardest pitcher to hit in Major League history, and he is a physical freak. He threw the ball as hard as any pitcher alive for a 25-year span. So Nolan Ryan is the answer to a million trivia questions, but when you ask who's the best pitcher of all time, it's not Nolan Ryan. But he's least in the discussion because of the strikeout rate and everything else.
Anything else on this date in baseball history?
Yeah, we have some. Jeff Manto on this date hit home runs in 4 consecutive at bats. Not in the same game; it was over 2 games. But I only mentioned that because Jeff Manto was a utility guy. In fact, he was such a utility. I love Jeff Manto. He made me laugh a million times. He was a utility guy who played like every position, and that was his strength. He used to carry 13 gloves with him on every road trip. You use a different glove at second base than he would at shortstop or at third base. He had a first baseman's mitt, catcher's mitt, all outfielder's glove, all this stuff. So he said, I said, Jeff, 13 gloves you have? He goes, yeah, the guys on the team call me Store because he had so many things, gloves that he must have gotten from the store. And he said, and the equipment man hates me because he's got to pack all 13 gloves. So good. So that was Jeff Manto in 1995. I love this. 1955, Floyd Bannister was born. Floyd Bannister was a very good pitcher. Went to Arizona State, one of the number 1 overall pick in the country. And later, his son, Brian Bannister, pitched in the major leagues. And more than one night, Brian Bannister faced off against Gavin Floyd. So you know how much I love pitching matchups. So the pitching matchup was Floyd Bannister. And Floyd Bannister is the name of the father of Brian Bannister, who pitched in the game.
You love those name connections
every
time.
I do. And last one, on this date in 1973, Pokey Reese was born. Love Pokey Reese. I could tell you 100 Pokey Reese stories, but he was a great defensive shortstop who could move really fast. very low to the ground, which was his greatest strength. But I'll never forget on March 31st, 2004, your mother, Kathy, and I were invited to the White House by President. I'm not dropping names here. It was a big baseball dinner. So we got to go to the White House. President George W. Bush invited us, and Peter Gammons was there. And we basically walked into the White House at the same time. And we're walking past all of these historic features of the White House on the way to the room where we're going to eat. And I can't help it. I said to Peter, because we just finished in spring training, I said, okay, who do you think the Red Sox shortstop's going to be? Because there was a big debate. So he said, I think it's going to be Pokey Reese. So now here we are having a discussion about Pokey Reese. And your mother, Kathy, to her eternal credit, looks at me and Peter and says, fellas, we're in the White House. Do you really think this is the time to be talking about Pokey Reese? Got to hand it to your mom there. Pretty good line.
I wish I was in the other car.
Yeah.
Now, Dad, is it a prerequisite that if your last name's Reese, you got to have a great first name? We got Pokey Reese, Pee Wee Reese. Like, I think it's just you got to have a prerequisite of a funny first nickname.
Yeah, well, Rich Reese, I grew up watching. Jimmy Reese was a roommate of Babe Ruth. Not a unique name, but Jimmy Reese was the first guy I'd ever heard who could pitch batting practice with his fungo.
Wow.
I told you Jose Oquendo could do that. You throw the ball up on the pitcher's mound, and using your fungo, you hit it across home plate. Jimmy Reese could do that, and I saw Jose Oquendo do that.
You can't even make jokes with the baseball encyclopedia and just making a joke about Pee Wee and Pokey, and you're like, well, let me name 5 other players with the last name Reese.
I wish I had more Reeses for you, Jeff, but that's the best I could do.
No, that's pretty good. I mean, with the fungo bat is pretty impressive, Dad. But if fungo, Oquendo, I think SVP would have a field day with that story.
Right. Well, we gotta get Scott Van Pelt on just to talk about the new Pope. How would he say that?
Pope Leo from Chicago. He went to Nova.
Oh, God, it's so bad.
It's so good.
Right.
All right, Dad. Well, let's wrap it on that. We've got so much for you. If you haven't subscribed yet, if you haven't followed yet, wherever you listen, whether it's Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever, greatgameorwhat.com, please follow and subscribe. It's completely free for you, and we can't wait for you to become part of our family. Dad, thanks so much for a great episode.
Thank you, Jeff. Had a great time. Talk to you tomorrow.
Thank you so much for listening, and thanks for always being a part of our family.